How you doing, sir?
Hey, what's up there, Si?
Oh man, you looking presidential back there, man.
Hey, I got look. Somebody got to do it.
Looking doggone good, man. Very good.
Thank you, sir. Listen, if you're supposed to speak it into existence, right?
Hey, you not only speaking it, you visually showing it. So very good. Now, happy New Year to you.
You too, brother.
We got recording now, and I wanted to tap into your perspectives on several of these agenda items, and then Richard Wooten should be jumping on, and Marcella Dunn may get on as well. But I want to jump right in. I want to thank you for your time, man. And this subject, it's a real near and dear subject. This missing persons and human trafficking.
It's funny you should. I just got off the phone. One of my a friend of mine, white guy. He's a chief of police down in Texas. They have formed. It turns out Texas is the number one spot for trafficking right now.
I did a little research before we got on too. I saw Houston, as a matter of fact, they at
Bingo,
least my research said.
bingo. Well, he's in a small town called Hewitt, Texas, but apparently they're the pipeline. But more importantly, I did a show about 3 or 4 months ago, and it's 65,000 reported missing women, particularly black. So black, and they want to now they're throwing in Latinx, but
Right.
primarily 65,000 black young women are missing. Now, here's the
I
problem with
wanted
that.
to, yeah, I'm glad you brought race up because I want to make sure that's a part of it
Oh
that
man,
we
yeah.
parse out.
Well, but let me just throw this at you, and here's what people don't want to talk about. Um, and I know it to be a fact. There are some black serial killers on the loose. Let me just tell you that. You don't hear a lot of talk about it. I helped put down a couple of them in Chicago.
Now we got and Miss Swepler on. Did you join Miss Swepler? I thought she had joined in. Oh, there she is. Okay, good. Because I want to make sure she know who you are, Mr. Mosley. Are
I
you
am
there,
nobody.
Loretta? Okay. So once she gets her audio on, we go bring her on and Marcella. But we are already framing the discussion, and we talking about how many missing women it is. I want to make sure we don't leave the guys out either, Mr. Mosley. And then what do
Okay.
you think is happening, and then what we can do about this. So your research finished with what you were saying about 65,000
I,
primarily black women.
I've got my numbers. I didn't know this. I should have pulled them up before I talked to you. But 65,000. The Centers for Missing and Exploited gave those numbers. Um, the real, at least for me, do I see a sinister side into it? Yes. To be quite honest, the other problem is the recovery. Now we're not recovering a lot of bodies, at least not that they're talking about. And then the problem is that misclassification of missing and running away. Um,
Right, right.
there's a whole different line, a whole different thought on that also. Um, for whatever reason, the misconception is you've got to be gone 24 hours before they can report you. That's a bunch of bullshit. And first thing is we got to get the real information out,
Mhm.
particularly for the youth. Um, if we look at the black community, there's an explosion of missing and exploited.
Okay.
I mean, the numbers are mind-boggling if you sit down and look at them per capita. Uh, and you look at it by, I mean, it takes some time to do it, but if you look at it by state, we got some big issues. Um, do I see a more sinister? Uh, if these people want to talk about QAnon and conspiracy theories, certainly missing and exploited is where we should be looking as opposed to some QAnon bullshit.
And what I want to get to, because we know it's happening, right? But we also got to look at the organ harvesting as
Oh,
well as
no
the
question.
human trafficking. So let's keep let's get your thoughts on all of that. And for Loretta, who joined in, she's out of Gary, Indiana. We also got Georgia as well. So Gary, Chicago, and Atlanta, that's a region we're trying to get unified, and the goal is to get us so connected that the perpetrators don't feel comfort. Like no matter where you go, there's a active group staying in connection with each other and stuff like that. So, Mr. Mosley, you spent how many years? 33 years on the police force?
Yes, two different forces. Most of my time was in Chicago, but I took a couple of years. I was the commander of special functions for Chicago Housing Authority Police Department Special Functions Unit. I had worked. I was actually the first commander of the HIDE unit here in Chicago, which is a high intensity drug trafficking area. There's about 10 HIDEs now. Well, those are conglomerations of manpower, really, because the feds just don't have, when we hear the term federal agents, people don't realize that the FBI is only a police force of less than 2,500 actual agents. We got more police officers in the district, in some
Right,
districts, than they do
right.
agents. I mean, but you hear the term FBI and you scurry, but be that as it may. But there has to be a refocus of, let me back up and say this. With this new administration, we have to put in front of them a refocusing of police powers and police investigations. Missing and exploited is an area that I know very well. Um, as I said earlier, I worked on two black serial killers here in the city of Chicago. Nobody even talks about.
Yeah,
Uh, Before he died, I had many conversations with Dick Gregory, who led me on some very interesting paths when we talked about the Dwayne Williams down in Atlanta. And after some of my research as a former homicide investigator, I can tell you without a doubt, Williams did not commit all those murders. I can
but
emphatically tell you.
Mr. Mosley, here's the thing though. From my research, intent, capability, opportunity, crime. Them the three
Okay,
ingredients.
right?
And in our community, who we tend to mind our own business, it makes it ripe and easy for
Oh no,
someone to get away with stuff. So I'm not surprised there's some hidden serial killers because we tend to close our doors and not get as active or mind other people's
well,
business.
here's the problem. You got to understand the whole psychology of a serial killer. They, in and of itself, is a study. Um, the mindset, um, everything you just said is true, but the mindset of a serial killer is different than that of a spree killer, mass, or just a straight out murder. I mean, it's all bad. However, that serial killer is probably 50 times more dangerous than any other animal known to mankind. Um, the idea of a serial killer is time and space. And in that vein, what is time and space? Well, time and space could be 2 blocks, could be 2 states. Um, Brown, the guy that was killing all the kids that finally got executed in Ohio, he killed two here, one that I worked on. They finally executed him in Ohio, but he was good for 6. The two that I worked on killed cumulatively. We believe they killed 40. But here's the problem. Here's the problem, and I started off telling you this earlier. The classifications of the victims are what oftentimes give cover to the criminal. And here's what I mean. In the cases that we worked out of Chicago, the majority of the victims were prostitutes.
Mm.
Now, unfortunately, well, thank God we had a sergeant who actually did the basic work and forced the city into a statement where they had to acknowledge it. But for most parts, these are throwaways. We started looking at it, and as I started talking to new detectives and new police officers, that's somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, aunt, whatever. Your job is not to castigate or give your personal opinions. Your job is to solve the crime. So,
Now, let me ask you a question right there, though.
sure, certainly.
Majority of the police department is Irish. Am I wrong for that?
Now you're about to go into another
Well,
issue.
no, I'm just saying because the way you see a person, a lot of times when you see someone that look like you tend to pay a little bit more attention than someone that don't look like you. So that's why I was trying to
Well,
bring that up.
well, that if we look at history, there's the term copper comes from a certain place. The term paddy wagon comes from exactly that issue. Tammany Hall out of New York, the corruption in New York. Well, Chicago is New York West, but yes, um, if you look at the command structure of Chicago Police in 2021, you'll find a large number that have, yes, Irish surnames. Yeah, but so your thesis statement is correct.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, because, and we got Loretta on here too, because when we talk about caring and wanting to find, unsolved crimes and things of that nature, a lot of it has to do with these people who don't live in the community, therefore might not have as big of a vested interest. So that's what I believe a big part of it is like who's in control there. Dr. Loretta, are you in audio? Can you hear us?
Can't hear
I
you.
can, yes.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I'm hoping to turn off my other line though, so that I can hear you completely with the Zoom.
Okay, well no, please introduce yourself.
Okay.
I know you say you're gonna just listen more, but I want you to
Okay.
know, Mr. Mosley, this is Carol Mosley Brown's brother.
Hey, I'm just Joe
Oh,
Mosley.
Very good. Very good.
So introduce yourself, Mr. Mosley, you know who you are.
Okay. I'm Sister Loretta Schlaper. Can you hear me when I speak like this, or should I turn up the volume?
No, I can hear you, madam.
You can hear me? Okay. I belong to a group of religious women. We're called Poor Handmaids of Jesus Christ. And people know us from Gary because we used to have the hospital, St. Mary Medical Center.
Familiar with it.
And then we also moved into Hobart in order to start that one. And then I was in town when we closed St. Mary Medical Center and sold it to another group, who then sold it to the police department. So that building continues to be in existence. Our sisters, came to Gary years ago, and we're working at St. Mary Medical Center, and also taught at Frable School.
Okay.
Years ago. So now we're in Gary because we're connected with Sojourner Truth House. We started Sojourner Truth House so that people who are in need can come for food, for personal items. They can get connections to resources, to organizations that they need, or to make sure that they get their children in health testing and things, so that they can go to school or go to daycare. And then we also have Linden House of Gary, which is for seniors, housing for seniors. So those are our two main ones, but we used to also have some schools and stuff like that. We were at St. Mark's School, which is right off of Ridge Road. So
Wow.
that's where we were starting. And then Sai, I think you asked a question, but you're on mute.
I was gonna say, when it comes to the Sojourner Truth House in Gary, and I wanted Mr. Mosley to speak about this. Vulnerable women is a big part of how some of them get lured into the human trafficking and things that it. Can you guys speak to that?
Very true.
You want me to go first, sister? Or?
Yes.
Well, there's no question. We talk about at-risk populations. Certainly that's a problem. Again, in my background, having worked with the women that had been, I think we have two survivors that we're able to identify, and they were runaways that had taken on a lifestyle of prostitution, narcotics. But then you have to look at what I call the victimology. The people that come after these people they see them as prey, unfortunately. And they are animalistic. I mean, from everything from biting to everything else. I mean, I won't even tell you some of the stuff I've seen, but when I tell you that they are animals, unfortunately they are. And they act like them. But more to the victimology. What is a victimology? Victimology for me is the study of what makes you a victim. How do these guys weed you out? And I can tell you, uh, I can go in a room and I can tell you who will be a victim. Unfortunately, I learned the craft from criminals. I mean, if you want to learn how to build an automobile, call an automobile mechanic. You don't go to a doctor. Um, so most of the time, even with my own family, I have to tell them, and my wife and my kids too, this is what you do. This is how you don't do. This is, you know, you have to look people in the eye. Um, Offenders size you up before they attack, much like an animal does in the wild.
Right.
Unfortunately, I
Right.
hate to use the analogy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's the truth. You know, and going forward in the year 2021, we have got to stop being prey. I mean, between and again, I know, forgive me for what I'm about to say, but after what we saw last week, I mean, the one thing Trump did is he ripped the bandage off of racism in America. I mean, just straight off, ripped it off. You know, for some, you know, some of my friends are talking about this is not who we are. Yes, this is exactly who we are. I
Yes.
mean, the whole idea of policing in America came from slave hunting. I mean, come on.
Mhm.
So, are we going to get rid of it? And I've had friends of mine say, let them go back under their rocks. That's the last place you want them to go. You don't want them underground. You want them out in the open where the light can cleanse them or where we can scrub them. Um, but again,
Well, and nothing else,
I digress.
expose them. You right. You don't want them hiding. So I want to make sure. So this is where we at now, and because we got Erica Dunn. Erica is our superstar that manages all things missing persons from the block by block perspective, and that's critical. Erica, are you there with us? Are your audio is on?
Yes, sir, Si. Can you hear me?
Wonderful, loud and clear. You mind
Excuse
introducing
my
yourself to our superstars on now?
Yes, my name is Erica Dunn, and I am the governor of 60619. 60619 is the missing persons unit in the National Block Club University structure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and I just want to apologize for my lateness because I just got off a conference call, a Zoom call with Congressman Danny Davis about the no-knock warrant. So please excuse me.
Now you're on time, and I'm glad you are meeting Mr. Mosley in your zip code, and then Dr. Schwepler is out of Gary, Indiana, and we have Brothers Keepers Shelter in Gary, which correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Schwepler, that's the shelter that houses sex offenders, men. It's a men's shelter, and they house sex offenders, and I was very close to a lot of them gentlemen in there, helping them to be active in the community. And I'm going to talk about my experience with that when we went into the community. But we're going to talk about that. And then we want to make sure that we talk about where are our missing women and children right now, what could be happening, and what we should be doing block by block to turn it around. As an expert on right now, Mr. Mosley spent 33 years in the police department. So he's seen a lot working with homicides. Right now, Mr. Mosley, we have DeWanda Glover. She's been missing since May 16th in Gary, Indiana, 48-year-old woman. And we searched all around. And we also have the two young, well, one, she's mentally challenged, but she's 26 now. She was 21. And her little king is the young man, and he was 4 years old, so he's probably 7 now. But anyway, they've been missing since 2015. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. The longer that they're missing, what do you think is happening? And could they be growing attached to whoever have them? What's your thoughts on that, Mr. Mosley first?
Well, let me be quite honest. You're talking about the young lady and her little brother that went missing. That was one of my students' kids from Bogan. I know, I'm very familiar with the case.
In Gary, Indiana?
Yes, he was. Their father was my student at Bogan.
What's his name? I can't believe I forgot his name.
Oh, you'll figure it out. But
Yeah,
in fact, I've got him on speed dial. I actually came over and used my drone to fly around a couple of times. Here's the thing: we have got to come up. One of my conversations with some of my neighbors is we've got to come up, and I've got some ideas that I call low-tech solution to high-tech problems. And here's what I mean. There are a lot of drone flyers that can be utilized for public safety. Free, low cost. Does it work? We don't know. But it's certainly something the criminal's not looking for. And here's what I mean. I won't even go into the whole story of the helicopters in Chicago, but let me just say this. Helicopters are what they call a force multiplier, but they're limited in range, limited in time. Plus, where are they? I mean, certainly they haven't been deployed to areas that we know of, but the fact of the matter is they can get anywhere real quick. They can get anywhere quicker, 5 times, and not 20 times quicker than a car, because there's nothing blocking their egress. So if we take that thought process and say, look, we get a group of people who are flying these drones recreationally, let's see if we can put them to use for the community. Now, remember now that in my case, I've got about 6 of them, but I've got one professional drone that I shoot high resolution from about 200-300 feet. Not supposed to go that high, but I can. I've been hired by insurance company to go over the roofs so they don't have to put people up. So if I can fly for an insurance company, why can't I fly for my neighborhood? But I do it anyway. Unfortunately, we can't. There are no true predictors of when crime is going to happen. However, if you go back to my original statement, these criminals have got their own study. They've studied you. They studied your neighborhood. They know your ins and outs. Where I live at 89th and Paxton, in this area alone, we've had maybe 20 or 30 carjackings. Well, it finally got some light, unfortunately, because the policeman gets killed over in Western. Well, why did it take a person to get killed in order to bring light on the subject?
I appreciate that, and I want to make sure Erica chime in on the same topic. Erica, what do you think can be done? The drone, I like that idea because what it does, it gives us like force multiplier effect. We can see more, but I think a big part of that also is to make sure the criminals know that the residents are standing up. Like, we're not going to go easily. We're not going to just sit by and let you traffic our missing women and children. But Erica, go ahead. What do you think?
I think the drone suggestion that's real powerful. It really is. And that's something that I never thought about. But as well as communities, the people, your neighbors, people like that, to come together, excuse me, someone was trying to call, to come together and get to know one another and let the predators know that we are united and we're watching. And that's the good thing about the National Block Club University, because we ask every individual, just say for instance, in my zip code or on my particular block, we ask that every neighbor gets to know the neighbor on both sides of them, and as well as in the front and the back. You want to know who's around you. You want to know the family members. So if someone is breaking in their home, you'll know, well, this is a strange face. So why, who are you? So that's very important, to put the neighbor back good, know. And as we need to get our young people involved. Young people have to be involved. And we have to, this is one of the problems. We were talking solutions, but I just want to point this out as well, because these predators are preying on the homeless population. It's a lot of people that's homeless, and they are easy prey for these predators, and it's so many things that has to be addressed, and it's a lot of solutions out there. And I'm glad that we're having this Zoom call, because I want to learn, and I also want to weigh in.
Yeah. And what you said, Mr. Mosey, we talked, it's called the force field. And Governor spoke about it. That means you know the neighbor on the left and right of you, meaning they have your phone number and you have their phone number. So if someone breaking in your house, they can call 911 and you. If your house catch on fire, you can find out before you get home. So neighbor on the left and right of you, neighbor in front of you, and the neighbor in the alley behind you. That's your force field. Them the most important people when it comes to your safety and your family safety is those 4 people. Then of course, if you know the rest of the block, that helps too. But that's your immediate security blanket there.
Look,
And then the piece that I think we need to come up with, and that's what we want to do this weekend, is what do we do when we see a young girl who we're not used to seeing, and it could be a young male as well, on the block, and it looks like they're not into what they're not into the crowd or that person. They look distressed. They look like something is wrong. What should we do? What do you guys think should be the next step?
Before you go there, let me give you a couple of other real quick ideas. I've shared this with some other people, particularly for women coming home. They make now in-car cameras that you can pull in, pull out. And give me a second before you start looking at it. What you do is you can buy, they've got systems now where you can put them in your car. They're not permanently attached. Let's say there's somebody following. You can flip that camera, and now you got a recording of someone behind you in your car. You can also take it out. The other thing that I'm working on is, or at least on my block, I've been doing what I call is, if you see something, say something. You call it phone banks, whatever else. That's what we're trying to do here. I'm trying to start my block club over here. The other thing that I suggest, a real low-tech solution to a high-tech problem, and again, forgive me for this, I'm using what they call trail cams. In my bushes, I'm about to put in trail cams, just like when they go hunting for deer. You put these trail cams, it's low-tech, very low-tech, but it's an answer because I don't have enough money because I'm retired. I didn't put in, unfortunately, I didn't put in the high-tech camera system around my house, which I should have when I had the money. So now I had to think of another way. What can I do? So I came up and I started looking around. I went to all these Cabela's and all this. I'm like, wait a minute. If they're catching deer, I can't catch a criminal. Now the beauty of the trail cam is that they're actually a little bit better because they will only operate within a certain amount of feet of wherever you place them, and you can hide them. So if you're not doing nothing, there's nothing for you to worry about. Plus, they're not going to flash. They have an infrared camera, so they don't ever see them. And check this out: you can move them. Not like your in-house camera systems. But let me address something else you just said. If you see a person that seems out of sorts, based on the laws of this country and the rules of engagement, there's really nothing you can say. However, if you engage them, now here's the problem: the engagement or the civic engagement becomes of particular concern. If I were to walk up to a young lady and she says, help, well, then that by law, I can intervene. If, however, I go up and I believe that something's wrong, now we got a problem. How do you articulate what the problem is? I think the real issue is, how do we articulate an issue? Now, there are certain ways. Let's say you go into a bank, they now have a code where if you put in your PIN number in reverse, it'll automatically trigger the police. Great thing. They also have in Europe where if you turn a glass a certain way, or if you turn a pin a certain way, they will activate. We need to work on those type of issues. But as far as engaging someone because they don't look, well, you could be called profiling on that issue.
And let me say this, the beauty though, and I think the key is on your block or on any residential block, because we only operate in our zip codes. So there's a meeting every month. So this is the excuse, if nothing else, to engage any single person at any time, because every month there's a different meeting. So that gives us a chance to put something in their hand and say, how you doing? If you got time, hopefully you can join this meeting. And that'll give you an opportunity to just kind of see where their spirit is, I think. And then what we try to train our superstars to do is to try to get people involved. Hey, you mind giving me your number? I can text you at the next meeting. And then we can kind of decipher and discern if they don't want to be bothered at all, then we can put them on our version of the no-fly list. I just wanted to put that out there because I think engaging, just like the stores, when you go in the store now, they immediately, how you doing? Because they want to get that jump start on what you up to. Let you know that I see you enter my store, I'm paying attention to you, you're not sneaking in. And I think the traffickers, because I want to talk about the profile of a trafficker, a person like that, they want to stay undetected because just like any criminal, I can get away with it longer if you don't pay attention to me. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
There's no question anonymity helps criminals. I mean, that's, you know, I have never met a criminal yet that wanted to be seen. So, and again, that goes back to why you look people in the eye, or why you have a camera. You know, what I tell even my sisters, and they're adults. If you feel something's wrong, follow your instinct. You can always delete the picture.
Right.
So,
You know, if they're not doing anything wrong, you can delete it. I mean, I've had people say, "Are you taking my picture?" Nope. Yeah, I am. Yep.
I would say too that we find too that most people who have been the victim of trafficking or any of the things, we say too, follow your intuition. It is a gift. It is a gift, and many people who have been victimized because they are not having that support or something like that. But the problem that I'm having with our conversation today is that for the women, we're calling them prostitutes. And that's of course always putting blame and criminal
I agree.
onto them. And they are not the criminal. It's just that the predator or the buyer has such a way of hiding themselves and putting her out there so that whenever she, appears to be leaving them or separating from them or objecting to what they are doing or what they are saying, then they start her on drugs. And so now we have a second name that we can call her. We can call her a prostitute, and we can call her a drug user, and we can imprison her and call her this kind of criminal while the buyer can walk away. He can walk away because he has threatened her so that he won't give her the right to voice what she sees and knows to be harmful to her person. But so many people, as soon as they know that that young girl is a prostitute, they think the girl is that by choice.
Agree.
They do not know that the predator has been choosing her, following her, knowing all about her, threatening her, so that for her to want to stay alive, being her biggest goal, she's not going to be able to answer some of these other things, because they're not going to listen to her. Even when we find that they go to the emergency room and the woman is trying to say, they're trying to figure out how to say trafficked. I'm a victim. They're trying to, but they hear in the hall, they're already calling her a prostitute. They're not going to talk to her. They're not going to listen to her. They're going to get her out of there as fast as possible, back into the hands of the buyer or the predator.
Well, let me interject and say this: that the laws that we currently work under are archaic at best. I work prostitution, and I can tell you, I've had state's attorneys that told me that she can't be raped. Oh, yes, she can, and I got charges approved. But again, that was because of my belief system, and I was not going to let it go by the wayside. However, the charging of somebody with pandering, pimping, is easy to charge what I would call the victim, the prostitute, and I'm not fond of that term, but the victim becomes being victimized again, if that makes sense to you. So I think the other issue, at least for me, is that we change the charging, we change some of the titles, and we have to address, the root cause. The whole idea of this in Chicago, and like I said, I've locked up pimps trying to get them charged because you got to get the prostitute to testify. Now, you tell this girl you got to testify against this guy.
Right.
It ain't happening. I mean, so in often cases, what happens again because of classifications, this person will walk, or they didn't get charged appropriately. They get charged with aggravated battery. They beat this girl half to death, as opposed to a pimping or pandering charge, which was the appropriate charge. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
No, it totally do. I think just to make sure that the people that will watch this later will know, we're talking all three levels: prevention,
oh
we're
yes,
talking resources, and
Mhm.
enforcement, which is what you just concluded with, Mr. Mosley, the enforcement side. Because when you talk about the root causes, when you got people having random sex and a baby is produced, neither one of them really want the baby. And then now you got this child growing up with emotional scars because of what's been happening. And because block by block, we're not as loving as we used to be. We're working on that. The village doesn't pick up that child. And now that child grows up in an environment where you got songs that glorify letting five guys have sex with you. It glorifies certain things that kind of take self-esteem even lower. And so I think our remedy or the way we has to be on what we do beforehand, meaning we got some children out there that we know their parents are not where they, showing the most love. And that's where the village picks up at. We take teenagers to different cities because sometimes the parents might not be able to afford it. And though that travel alone broadens that child's perspective, they're no longer looking limited. Hey, just right here, I see it's another world out there. It's places with horses and cows on the road to New York. And so I think that's a big part of it. We have to raise people's exposure so that they have more self-confidence, even if they going home to a beat down environment. Because one of the kids we took to New York, when we drove back, he went back home and all the people, family members on the porch smoking weed. We get back 11 at night. He excited. He been to the Atlantic Ocean, Coney Island. He ready to share his story. As soon as he got out the car, hurry up and get your blanket upstairs. You supposed to be in bed for school tomorrow. I saw his face, like, it crashed. He was like, man, I'm excited, and here you go beat me down. But what we can rest with is we know what he experienced in New York. His parents can't take that out of his head. They can't take out his head being in Central Park, being in Times Square. No matter how much they smoking weed, getting high, and beating the hopes of a person. Boy, imagine a girl. So I think we gotta make sure we making the right investments early on with these young people, so that even if they come in from bad parenting, they know it's a better world out there. And then the resources, we gotta, that's where Dr. Slepper, where you come in at, the funding has to be there. If we're giving major corporations all these breaks, we got to look at that, because we need to be pouring money into the resource side for this. And then the enforcement side, to me, Mr. Mosley, it really, really comes down to block by block, locking down our blocks with love and accountability. But what do you guys think?
well,
Can I weigh in on it just a little bit real quick?
Of course.
Okay. By me being the governor of 60619 within this structure, which is the missing persons unit,
Yep.
I honestly take my position seriously, and
Yes,
I've
you do.
done extensive research on missing persons. Okay. So you have a few elements in this. You have people, you have pedophiles, you have
Yep.
child traffickers, you have people that are organ harvesting. Now, a lot of people don't like to speak on this, but it's not only people that's located in, our communities. There
Right.
is an elite group of people that
Global.
had these rings.
Yep.
Yes, global. I'm talking about China.
Yep.
I'm talking about the government.
Yep.
I'm talking about the military. I'm talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about the entertainment industry. I'm talking about elite politicians. They're all involved in this. And see, I remember that when I was a child, I used to see, well, when we had our lunches in school, on our milk cartons, there were pictures of missing children. Then, so this didn't just start now. So it's a lot of levels to this. And some people just don't really want to tackle this the way that it should be tackled. Because like you said, Si, you have to put exposure on this. You have to put exposure on it. No pedophile, no rapist, no child sex trafficker, organ harvester. They do not want to be seen. They don't want anyone to know who they are. So exposure is number one. We can't ignore what the elites are doing and just look at the people that's on the lower part of the totem pole. We cannot do it that way.
Yep.
It won't work.
No, totally. And the beauty, Governor, is the structure. As you know, you're linked to Angola in Africa. So,
Yes.
but that's with the black side. That's with at the African side. But that's not including China, Europe, and other places that we know have the power and sit in high places. What I think, though, and I love to get Mr. Mosley thoughts on this, I think we lock down what we can lock down first, which is where we live. We lock that down. And then just like you're connected internationally, we also have to start the communication there. And then on the enforcement side, it has to be exposure. Like we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So it don't have to be we do this and we can't do that. We do all of it simultaneously. But I think it starts on your end, Erica, with making sure that in the zip code that we try to meet every single person, because every single person knows somebody else, and that's what keeps us connected and attached. But I'm totally with you on that. You're right. There's some people in high places. I just think the key is that we lock down local first, so we got a stronger base. Because when you start tapping into the higher echelons, you shine the light. And if we're not strong at the bottom, they just take out the people with shining the light, and then there's nothing else to keep it going. So we tighten it up first, block by block. Now when we shine the light, it'll be too many people for them to take out, because you're right, it's in high places what's happening.
Yes, sir. I agree.
So I do want to talk about the organ harvesting. And Mr. Moses, this is what I was telling you. So you got the pedophiles. Every Monday is safety day to us. So we look by zip code to see who the registered sex offenders are. And this is just my thoughts. So you got to tell what you think. But a boy who's 18 and he's dating a girl who's 15 and they have sex and he's now registered as a sex offender is different than the guy who don't know you and you go to the grocery store and as soon as you come out the store, he puts some over your face, take you somewhere and rape you. That's just my thoughts. Those are two different cases, or two different type of men situations. What do you guys think?
I think you're talking about apples and oranges, unfortunately. I think that, you know, the rapist is a criminal, whereas a young man or young girl could make a mistake. However, what you're also is addressing a thing called statutory rape, which doesn't exist in Illinois. So that doesn't exist. But let me address something Erica said about the organ harvesting. My conversation with Dick Gregory would probably scare most of you on this call. That to say this, name me one person that's ever been charged in organ harvesting. You won't.
Because
So that and again, to your point, I think we're all saying the same thing. And this is what my point to you all. We have to change these laws. I mean, from everything from the statute, which doesn't exist in Illinois, to the idea of a rape. I hate that term. Sexual assault is what I prefer to use. But this whole idea of organ harvesting is for real. I mean, it's happening. I mean, if you look at the information, again, I got information from Dick Gregory and from the CDC even, and it was happening down there in Atlanta, right under their noses. And when I said to you
Mr.
that,
Mosley, you didn't they charge? It was a black van with organs in Detroit, and they had the people who had these organs. Did you hear about that case?
if
was
you're
a big
talking about,
deal.
if you're talking about the case where the funeral home, I think that's the case you're talking about. Again, the corpse doesn't have the same rights as the person, if that makes sense. Um, Organ harvesting to me is that you taking this person that's alive and taking from them something that you shouldn't, because they don't give you consent. A corpse doesn't have to give you consent. There's a whole different issue.
I get what you're saying. So I'm writing all this down, you guys, because there's so many echelons, and the laws is a big part. We have a new House Speaker in Illinois, and LaShawn Ford is been working with us because, and then I think Chicago just passed the new criminal justice bill. Is that accurate, you guys, in Chicago?
They
It's
did. That's
it's
the
Illinois. That's the bill, House Bill 86383, somewhere in there. It started out as an omnibus bill, started out as a medical bill, and then it bloomed to something else. I would tell you to be very careful of it. But here's the problem with those bills. If you look at the police department, at least in Chicago, um, we've gone back to 1965 numbers for black officers, but nobody's talking about that.
exactly. And
Nobody's
you
talking
know
about
what?
that.
I promise you, I just stated this on the Zoom call with Congressman Danny Davis. I told him police reform is good, but it would be much better if you would start replacing these white terrorist police officers with black men in the black communities.
Look,
We have to be represented. Because like you said earlier, the trust has never been there because these police officers
Right.
started off as slave catchers. So it's never
Slave
been
patrol.
exactly. So it's never been any trust. So if we want trust, and we
Right.
want real reform, we have to replace. We have to
Right.
replace. That's
Not
the
totally.
must.
but
Eh,
let me
Totally.
let me just give you this. In every police department across this country, the elite unit is the detective division. Hear me out. Every place, New York, Miami, California, the place where we should be. When I went into homicide in the late '80s, we were up to at least 100 black homicide detectives across the city of Chicago, which wasn't nothing then. We're less than 50 in 2021. Now,
Oh,
add that to this. As of last week, well, they just replaced them. Up until about a week ago, there were no black commanders in the homicide detective division in the city of Chicago. What? What? I mean, they just put some people in, but now listen to this trick. This is how they get y'all, and I say y'all. They give you a black
You too,
face.
man.
They give you a black face,
Right.
but they never
yeah.
did the job.
Right.
When I was in 20 years in homicide. When I made sergeant, they didn't put me back to homicide. They put me somewhere else. I couldn't even make lieutenant. I've been in 2 shootouts, wrote 2 books, wrote 6 grants for the department, but I didn't have the right surname. But that's another rant, and I'm sorry to hijack the conversation.
Now, that's a good point. Now we got Pam Dominguez. Pam, are you on?
Yes, I am. I'm
Okay.
here.
Pamela, can you do your introduction and let us know what's your thoughts on our missing women and children in the city of Chicago?
Yes, my name is Pamela Dominguez. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois. I'm the district leader for Auburn Crescent, and been working with the kindergartens and 10th graders and everywhere else where I see I can be of service. My thoughts on the missing persons, in a nutshell, I think they don't care about us. I heard the gentleman say a moment ago about how our figures are reflected back to the 60s and things don't change. If they were slave catchers, maybe they're still out here taking our children. I know it's a big move for organs, and a lot of thought is behind people are missing because they're taking the organs out of their bodies and using them for other things. And then there's sex trafficking. I mean, too many, I don't even want to think about what the outcome is for where our missing women and girls and children are being placed, if they're even still alive.
And on that note, if they're like our missing person in Gary, the one the governor, 48 years old, I said to the family as we was working together, it's best that we find her before winter sets, because if you find her in the summer, worst case scenario, rigor mortis will set in, the smell, someone will find her. But once the snow hits the ground, it's freezing. It's
Yeah.
almost like, a freezer, and you won't find the person. So it's best to find them over the winter. And when you don't hear any news, the possibility that they're still alive is greater than if you hear they found a body somewhere. So I
Yes.
wanted to just put that out there, you guys. Seasons matter when you up north, winter versus summer with our missing persons. And then I think we also need to get the strip club, because a lot of people may be working the strip clubs, not involuntarily, I should say, because they don't have shelter and things of that nature. So I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on that as well.
Mm.
Yeah, that is a big issue, especially in Atlanta. I used to live in Atlanta for almost 20 years, and that's like the strip club capital. And they prey
Right.
on lots of women. I mean, they come up missing from airports, from bus stations. I've heard all the stories.
Yeah,
So
bus
that
station.
is
Yes.
yeah, they prey on them. They prey on them. It is, and that's the first thing they do. They take them off in those clubs and they put them to work. So that is a really big issue.
And this is what I mean. Honestly, when you think about Black people, where is our refuge? The Latino community have Texas. Like the poorest Latino can come across the border, and there's a support system in Texas that will build them up, and then they can redeploy anywhere in America where they have linkages at. I don't know where our refuge, I don't know the place where we have that, where our people who's just getting out of jail wanted to turn their life around. Where do they go? I don't know. What do you got?
No, we do need other resources. We need other structures in place for people that's been victims, for rehabilitation. We need these types of things, definitely. And I'm glad that the sister from Gary is on, because you said that she's involved with resources. Maybe she could weigh in and give us some ideas of, ways to pursue it.
Dr. Schlepper?
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm a sister for my community, and that's my main source. But yes, whenever you're talking about pursuing, like if you're talking about funds or anything like that, it's like that's where we want to be attentive to find out where is that main thing. Like right now, we find out that in the Black community, there's a group that is going to start working with men who are innocent, and getting them out of jail and things like that. Trying to work on that basic step of when you get out of jail, or when you are trafficked into another country, or even in this country, like all over the place and things. How do you get that first step of getting your ID back? I can tell stories, and I know you can too, of how women have said they have had to cut up, they have the machete is pointed at them, and they have to cut up their ID. They have to burn their ID.
Yeah.
They have to comply with tearing up their own information and stuff like that. Now, how do you get that back again whenever you are out of the hospital, or whenever you are out of the prison? So it's like the man who might be living in Gary at this particular time, but has a birth certificate that he needs from Texas. So now, in order to get that, you probably are going to need $300 to $500 just for that one person's ID, and trying to come up with funds and stuff there. It's like trying to find those sources that lead you back to a source that could provide that. So we say too, if that person is leaving prison, why isn't the prison giving that back to them? Why
Yes.
isn't it giving them their ID back again, besides just giving them a prison ID? Why aren't they giving them their own birth certificate, in order to be able to go
Yes.
forward? And so that's how we're trying to track it, in order to see who is that first base that could be providing that. And then if
Yeah.
nobody does, then yes, then we try to get to another group who will see the majority of people. So like I would say, with my limited realm, there's those who would come through Sojourner. And then I would say too, where do I find a source in order to get some help, in order to get my ID? Because right now I could live with, I could sofa jump and, and go to my brother's house, my sister's house, or to a friend's house, for such a short time or something, or live on somebody's back porch for a short time, but that doesn't get me my ID. So trying to get them to be able to sign up for it at a location, and then being able to wait for it, and then have an address that they can use in order to be able to go forward. So that's one of the things that we're
And
always trying to do, or otherwise provide that money so that the person can go forward. Yes.
That is a
well,
great
here's the piece
idea.
with the ID. Now, here's the key with the ID, you guys. And here in the South, the other party is big on voter fraud,
Yes.
so-called voter fraud. So that ID is a big deal, because that means that you have to have an address. And this is the political part, where you don't want them to have an address, because then you don't have to worry about them having an ID. They don't have an ID, you don't have to worry about them voting for the most part. So it's a whole system that we got to use legislation to really turn that around. So that goes back to what you saying, Mr. Mosley. But I just want to make sure you guys know what I'm thinking. My view, though, is Mississippi, which is the poorest state in the union, should be that state, because it's where your dollar stretches the most. And it's connected to, you got the water down there, so you got the Gulf of Mexico, you got the waterway. So I think that's a port of entry. And then I think we should definitely be looking at like 3-year assignments over to the continent, to Africa, as a way of building up. And if we get that, along with a shuttle service going between the South and the North, that can help logistically. So these are big, big, big ideas, but you got to think big when we talk about turning this stuff around. So I just wanted to put that out there: Mississippi, Africa, as outlets for our people who might be needing a fresh start. And then you got the shuttle service, which is something we're going to be doing either way it go, because we just need to be able to move people around. And I think that takes a lot of power and sting away from the predators, when those women or those vulnerable men have options, because that's the whole piece with control, is they don't feel they have options. But what do you guys think?
I think that's a great idea. What you just said, as well as what the sister just said about prisons should provide inmates with state ID before release, because it is. I've experienced it with so many people, even with this stimulus money that came out. It's a lot of homeless people. I've been out trying to canvas, making sure everyone gets their money. A lot of them don't have state ID, and when you go into the system, they kick you out if they don't have ID. They say apply next year. So it's very big to have. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I also agree with Mississippi being a new outlet for fresh starts, and we're on point.
So I want to read these regions so you guys would know, and it's recorded. I'll make sure you guys get it. But it's 7 regions. So I want y'all to know the stretch of what we're talking about. Gary, Chicago, Atlanta. That's a region. Making sure that our leaders know each other in that region. Miami, Birmingham, and New Orleans. That's another region. Dallas and Memphis is the 3rd region. Kansas City, St. Paul, and Cleveland. That's another region. That's the 4th region. LA and San Diego. That's a region. And the Detroit, St. Louis, and Milwaukee is the 6th region. And the last one is the biggest one. That's Boston, Philadelphia, DC, Norfolk, and New York City. So through 7 people, we're able to have relationships in 20 cities. And I talked to probably 8 or 9 different cities just to check on their missing persons before we got on this today. And each one of them, and one Miami in particular, even the massage therapists have to go through training on watching for human trafficking. And so I don't know if that's the law in Illinois or not, but I said I bring that up. But at least we got to look at the fact that these predators, they're networked in, they traffic girls across state lines. So it makes sense for us to have a comparable system through state lines where we're talking to each other and making sure we get better acquainted to make those predators feel less insulated and feel like they can get away with things because they left the state. So I just wanted to put that out there. 7 regions covering 20 cities, and that links right into Governor Erica being in charge of Philadelphia. So I just want y'all to know that's what we're looking at. And next year, when the COVID is over, we want to have this as a physical 3-day summit where we're getting people from all of these cities to come in, and each one of them would give an update on what they've been doing to close this gap between our missing persons and making sure that we get to know each other even better. And then, like Erica said, we got to have a PR campaign against trafficking, a PR campaign about kidnapping. Right now, Memphis is probably the worst place for abductions based
Wow.
on our research. They and get you at the gas station, put you in the car and take you. Memphis, Tennessee is just like Chicago with the carjacking. So just criminals knowing that people are coming together, I think is going to help us. What do you guys think?
Agreed.
I do as well. When you mentioned about I mentioned sex trafficking, so other people have as well. And I know here in Chicago, I live in Auburn Gresham, and there's a high school kitty corner from where I reside. And there have been incidences, and what we've been told here in Chicago about these white panel vans driving around, and they're catching the girls when they're early, on their way to school. And but it's kind of known that these vans are cruising our neighborhoods, but I don't know if the police are doing anything about that.
Now, Pamela, do you know what we're doing about that? You know what we asked everyone to do?
Yeah, tell about it, Si.
So our philosophy is this, and I want to get Mr. Mosley's thoughts on this. Any van,
That's
any
right.
van that you can't see inside of, any
Okay.
van, white, black, we want you to write down the license plate and where you saw it at and what time you saw it, and text it to 312-405-8844.
Okay.
Right now, Inglewood is the only one that I'm getting these from on a regular basis. So we want people to have that and text when you see any van. Now we're not, so Mr. Mosley, before you give me your thoughts on it,
No,
we're
I'm
not
good.
turning, we're not turning nothing in. We ain't doing nothing but compiling our own
Database.
Microsoft Excel
Okay.
database.
Okay.
Because we know some of these guys, that's their construction trucks, and they don't want people breaking in,
Right.
taking their supplies. But that's
Right.
okay, as long as we don't hear about a similar van
That's
doing
right.
something wrong, we won't turn that in. But what do y'all think
Okay.
about that?
All right. I think it's a good step. I will keep my eyes open and have pen and paper handy.
One day we go get flyers, because that's part of the PR campaign, so people would know, like, you better be on the lookout. You're doing something wrong over here.
Okay. All
Mr.
right.
Mosley, what you think, man? ACLU go get us?
Man, dang ACLU. Look, listen, laws are made by us, by the people and for the people. If the people don't speak up, they don't get made, But
Right.
the fact of the matter is, if we don't push back on these cats, they're going to keep on doing this. I mean, they're going to keep, and that's why if you remember, I started off this conversation, there's a reason they're called predators. I mean, they know exactly what they're doing. And here's where people get this confused. Let me say this and be very clear about it. They're not stupid. The fact they haven't been caught should tell you something. The fact that they have a structure, an organization, they have planning, They've got routes to come in and out. They're not stupid.
Right.
But other part of that is the enforcement. Now, and it goes back to something we said earlier, Ms. Erica,
Mhm.
we have got to change the paradigm with the police department has to change. But let me just say this to you, and please forgive me this for saying this. It ain't the patrolman, it's really the leadership. What you're seeing is a failure of leadership.
Yes,
The
sir.
fact that these cats won't do what they're supposed to do, don't blame it on them. I mean, I was a leader. And when they saw me coming, everybody did what I asked them to do, plus a little more.
Mhm.
You know, so what you have is a failure of command. But the other thing is this: silence is consent.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
You know, for everything that I mean, from all these execution of these young black men across this country. Look, let me just be very clear. I was the police, loved it. My father and uncle were the police. My sisters were both prosecutors. But I don't stand for wrong. It ain't gonna happen. But they have
That's
been executing these cats, but we have to stop them. But if the leadership, listen to what I said again, if the leadership don't stand up, don't ask that guy down below you to help you out.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true.
And on that front, on the leadership part, you're right. Parental leadership, political leadership,
Yeah,
business leadership, you leadership. If a kid
layers.
break my window, I want to talk to the parents. You know what I mean? I want to talk to that kid. Go get me who's in control. You know, so I'm with you. So the good part again, it goes back to the zip code structure, you guys. When we create zip codes where criminals don't feel comfortable no more, now we can start moving forward to the broader people who we know is doing things statewide and then internationally. Because you, like we say, we know there's an international component, even from Black women hair. I just learned that 2 months ago that there are camps in China where they shave the women hair
Yep.
just to provide hair here. Like
Yep.
I didn't even know that. Like
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
so, this is some international stuff here.
Here,
Mhm.
let me throw this out here for everybody. And here's what I want you all to do. Take the Chicago Police Department and the Chicago Fire Department, and I want you to look at the zip codes of the command structure. You're going to find something very interesting.
They all in one area.
By zip code.
Wow.
I got it. I mean, I told this to the FBI and they didn't do nothing about it. So don't think the FBI is your friend neither.
Oh, no, I don't. I don't. None of those alphabet boys are our friends.
Look, I called them FBI found by incompetence.
That's a good one.
So
I'm sorry, I
So
didn't mean to jack.
we got so we got to wrap up here. Let me say this, and I want y'all to know that this here is what's needed. Number one, you said it. Silence is permission. So we're not going to be silent. As we get more funding in, we're going to create visual campaigns, T-shirts, you name it, billboards, radio commercials, so that we create an atmosphere. When I used to do prayer vigils on the block, I always, on the bullhorn, when we came on the block, I talked about that father, that uncle who's messing with the female in the house, the child. And I called that out over the bullhorn. And I just felt like I can see spirits getting uncomfortable on the porch when I talked
Mhm.
about that. If you know who's touching that little girl in your house and you don't say
Right.
nothing, like you can just see people being like, hurry up and leave, man. We don't want you disrupting the silence on this block. Don't bring up that I'm touching my niece. Don't bring up I'm touching my daughter. And I think we had to create that type of atmosphere block by block where those people doing that type of stuff don't feel comfort. Like you want them agitated and moving around and getting
Yeah.
fidgety good. So that way
Yeah.
we can treat it. So that's what I believe. And we go build this. And Governor Erica been on it. You've been on this thing ever since you got the assignment. Every Wednesday meetings about it, and we got to keep that out there because there's so many attacks happening to our community that we need people to focus. Because if not, we'll, what I mean, all our eggs be in one basket, then we get crushed. So this is important. Any final remarks from anyone?
Thank
I
you for
just
having me.
want to say thank you. Yes, I appreciate everyone on this call, and I look forward to us hammering away at this little bit by little bit. But if we keep moving, we'll get a lot of it. Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to say too, what I've heard, I'm sorry I was late, but what I've heard has been enlightening. A lot of times you want to do things, but you don't know where to go or where to start. And the two things, the one that the sister said about the ID for the prisoners. Now they paid their time, they're working for free. Why can't that supply them with identification when they get on the street? And I think that's something that really needs to be looked into. But I also want to share, there's a place called Deborah's Place. And I know women would come there directly from prison. They could not go see their mother. They couldn't see anybody. They had to go straight there and they would help with that. And that's about the only place I know of. It may be more, but I think we could investigate those resources where people are providing services for people returning to society.
And thank you.
So
That's
thank you.
yep. Mr. Mosley, final remarks.
Thank you for having me. If I can be of assistance, I'm always here.
Salute to you, man. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Dr. I was about to call you doctor again. Sister Shepler, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I was reminded of when we were talking about organ trafficking, the people that I've heard of all come to say they know that I have two of them. So they know I have two eyes, they know I have two kidneys and things like that. And that's how they are trafficked. In order to
Say that again, I'm lost.
Those who are trafficked often say that when they have an organ that was taken, they take one, whatever you have two of. So like the one that has been most popular lately is the child who was organ trafficking for both eyes. And then they say they know that I have two of them. And so they take one, but later they come back and get the second.
Wow.
I never heard that.
Yeah, yeah. Like kidneys were the
Kidneys are one of the main.
kidneys were going. Hearts were $500,000. Kidneys are about 50 to 100,000.
And lungs.
Kidneys and
Yeah.
lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, you guys, the way we're structured as a people right now, anyone can do anything to us. So we got to close ranks, get close so that we can hold these doctors that we know is involved with that type of stuff accountable. Everyone who's exploiting our community, we got to be held to account. So as we keep tightening up our zip codes and then getting Mississippi going and getting this thing, it's going to make it harder for them to continue to exploit us, y'all.
Agreed.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. Be safe out there. And until we meet again.
All right.
All right. Nice to meet you all.
My
Nice
pleasure.
to
Have a good
meet
night.
you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Be
Yes,
safe
sir.
out there.
Okay, bye-bye.